Hello, it's Tristan here from ZebraInvest, and I've got a great video for you today. If you are looking to find the owners of empty properties, then stay tuned. Today we're going through the step-by-step process of going out and finding owners of properties that are empty, how I identify them, and then how you can go through, find out whether the property is registered, and if you can then reach out to them. Otherwise, trying to use electoral roll data, possibly where you can find that information, and then heading off using probate records too, so you can find the last owner and get in touch with them. So we'll make this a little bit step by step. One of the best ways to go out and find these properties is actually just on the foot, just walking around and having a look around. But you can also use Google Maps as well, and you can quite easily see overgrown sites. And overgrown typically means that those properties haven't got someone living there, because it's April when I'm recording this video, and when you go outside and you see properties, you can see stuff growing out of them, trees growing, you've got plants all over the place, the bins haven't been taken out, and there's quite a few things that will give you a little indicator. So what I want to do here is jump into Google Maps and show you a property I walked past the other day. So this property is just here on Mill Hill Road. I was going off for a drink with my girlfriend as a little date night, and I looked at it, and every time we ever walk past anything, I always stop and I think, ooh, that looks interesting. So this property down here has got the trademark traits of an empty property. If I can find it, you can see it here straight away. So the first thing I usually try to look out for is it overgrown? Because if it's overgrown like this property, you can see that someone can't get to the front door of the property, or if they can, it's going to be a struggle to get there. Then when you, let's have a look, I can't seem to jump back and forwards, but you can see that that property is overgrown from there. What you can also usually do is you can look back over time. So if you click the see latest date, you can look back and you can see how long that has been overgrown for and who's been looking after it. So it's been quite some time since someone's been there and lovingly looked after it. Let's see if we can move up. It's not letting me get a little bit closer to this one. But you can see it's a property just with the overgrowth that is going to point and show that one out. But I know exactly where another one is here. So if I just head down to another location. So I'm just heading into Southampton. It was a location in an area that I used to live in and operate in. And again, I'll give you the example of another empty property so you can get a good idea. So I was based up not far from Bitton. I'm just having a look where it all was. So you can see just down in this neck of the woods, it's got this really nice set of houses that all faced onto the river. What I'm looking for here is when you look at properties from an aerial view and you aren't necessarily walking the streets, and you might want to do it this way, you can usually see where a property is overgrown and it looks like it needs a little bit of TLC. And let's just say that this one needs quite a bit of TLC. So you can see straight away here, you can see just the amount of land on the property. It's a really decent sized property, and it's got tons and tons of overgrowth all the way through the garden. It's really thick. But the best bit is when you jump in and do a street view, you can turn around and see this property here. And again, it's got the same massive overgrown traits. You can see it's really overgrown. And then you can jump back in history on these properties to have a look at them. And then you can then find properties that are possibly good for targeting or reaching out to. I'll head to another one now so you can see a bit more of an idea and understand what I'm doing. So here there's actually two properties that are really quite close to each other that we can tell are empty. So if I just pop my little man on the street here, I've walked past this one a few times, but you'll be able to see. So look, we've got Quick Fit here operating in the building. They're clearly operating the ground floor of the building, and you can see upstairs in the windows there's nothing going on there at all. It's sat empty for quite some time, and it is just literally sitting empty. You can also see here Business 106. It just hasn't changed in years. And again, you can go back and you can see the same thing in 2019, same in 2017 as well. You can see the whole space is just unused. And the reason that can be interesting is you can work out properties to be able to target, to then be able to convert. But let's head on up this street, and there's another one sitting just here. And you can see the back of this building, you can see it's got signs in it, windows all left open, and it's a property that is just simply not in use at all. And it's quite good actually using Google Street View, because you can go back in time and see if there's been any changes. It's an easy way to be able to go around and do it. And the last thing I did promise you, I'd also show you how you can spot land too. if you're looking for a video specifically on finding land and infill development plots, I've done another one of those on this channel, so jump in and watch that separately. But here you can see that there are plots where they are just sitting empty and they're pretty much, have got nothing on them. You can see here we've got a massive plot of land that's doing absolute diddly squat. If we change the timeline, you can see it's back there. Again, it's the same again. Here it's the same old mess, and in 2012 again it's the same old mess. You get the gist. But one of the interesting bits that we could just see there when we're in the just on the back view is it's interesting, isn't it? Look, we can see that there's no actual fence panel there, so the chances are it's actually owned by next door. So is this property empty? The usual traits are if the bins haven't been pulled out. So if the bins aren't getting pulled out regularly, you can tell that the property is sitting empty. If you've got things like where the lights, if you walk past a property in the evening and lights haven't been turned on, again, chances are that property is sitting empty. But it can then be quite good if you then want to be able to find those owners. So look, Tristan, you've shown me how to find an empty property. Tell me how I can actually find out if one of these is registered. So let's head back to that first property I found here on Mill Hill. The first thing we need to know is the address of the property to be able to target and work out which one it is. So you can quickly have a look at the addresses on other properties. That's going to be 88, likely that's probably going to be 86, and that's probably going to be 84. But one other way of doing this I quite like using is a piece of software called Property Data. And this is going to be quite useful in a second when you see how we're trying to work out which properties are registered and which ones aren't. So what we're going to do here, you can see it's got the same old traits. It's got massive overgrown front garden and massive overgrown one at the back. So what we're going to do here is we can do a couple of things. We've got the address, but I'm going to go to plot map, and this will simply take me straight through to almost what the OS maps look like. And you can simply click here and we can click for the one that we wanted, which was number 86, which is just this property here. If you didn't know the address of it, or another way of doing it is simply you'd be able to see here is 84, 86 is just the one in between, and you'd be able to know that that property is 86 Mill Hill Road. But the reason this is useful is trying to find out whether a property is registered or not. If a property is registered, it means that it's been added to the land registry since 1995. Previous to that, title deeds were all actually pieces of paper. You'd have them all in paper and they would be held typically with your bank or maybe with your solicitors. But when all of the deeds went digital and went online, a lot of the mortgage companies that held them simply shredded them and got rid of the documents. It's a shame because a lot of them would have been really pretty pieces of information. But here you can see, look, we have 86 Mill Hill Road, Norwich, and it was last sold in 2002 for £85,000. If you don't have property data, I'll show you the other way around of doing this as well. You simply take the postcode of a property, you go over to Rightmove, you head to the house prices, and then you just put that postcode in. And then you click search. And if it doesn't come up with that property, and that property is not listed on that list, it means the property has not been registered. Why is this interesting? So on this list we are going to be able to find that property at number 86. As we said, it is back in 2002, and we can see it here. But if it is registered, it means that we'll be able to go to the land registry, download a copy of the title, and then we'll be able to find out who the owner is of that property. If it's not registered, then it's a little bit more complicated, and I'll come back to that and explain how you can use the electoral roll with websites like 192 and Trace Genie to be able to find out who the owner is. But if we head back over to property data, we can see that we've got the address and the details of the property there. What we can do here is we can take the title number, and then you're able to be able to buy that document if you wanted to. Here they'll charge you a slight fee for it, so you can buy the complete set, so the title plan and the register. The actual price nowadays is £7 usually from Land and Registry for one of these, which you can do by simply going to Google, and you've just got to enter in to get the information about property or land. You can get a copy of the deeds, the register will be able to give more details, so pay the £7 for the title. So fill in the details using a properties form. Let's see if that one will work. Here we go. We can find out if we can even find out if it's registered. Let's just do it this way because there's a slightly different way to the way that I usually do this. So we're going to just put that in. We've already got a copy of the title, but we'll take this so those people who don't have property data can use this too. We can find number 86. Then at the bottom of this page you can see that you can find the documents available just by clicking View Available Documents. You'll need to have an account to log in and access these. But what I'm going to do is download a copy of the title so you can see exactly what one of these would look like and explain it for you. So when you download a title or you've got one from solicitors, it'll typically look exactly like this. It'll come in, it'll say it's an electronic document, and then onto the next page as you swipe down it'll then slowly give you more detail. So here it's going to give you the title number, the date that was last updated or registered, and then as you come down it'll come up with more information. Within the property register it'll tell you exactly what that property is, where it's titled and what information is there. And then under the proprietorship registration it will then tell you who owns it. I've just passed that data so then someone doesn't know what else is in there, but you can then look down and you can see any other information that's about the property or any detail that would be related to it, so any covenants or any details on here. But here we can see it just has a charge registered and that Barclays have a mortgage against the property. We could then use the name that is in the proprietorship information, gone across there, to be able to then send them a letter in the post and to try and target them. The other and very obvious thing you can do with Google is simply search the address of that property, because as you come down you might find valuation details, you might find anything else related to it, and here we can actually see that we found someone who's related to the property and another person related to the property as well, that we might then be able to work out where they live and possibly send them a letter to get in touch with them. But what we can also then do is use something to be able to try and track who's actually living at that property, because if it is sitting empty, even if we do send a letter there, we might not find them. So there's two websites that you can use for this. One is 192.com. So you can use 192 or Trace Genie. Let's find that here. And Trace Genie again is a very similar website where you can find anyone who's registered on an electoral roll and also anyone who's historically been registered on an electoral roll. So that's basically where you register to vote. So you find that history and you see if someone's on it. The best way to do this is if you're going to use 192. 192 is prohibitively expensive and they charge quite a lot for each search. And you eventually you buy a set of credits and you roll up through it. Whereas with Trace Genie, you can pay for, say, a month's subscription, and then you can do as much searching as you like, or you can pay for a whole year, and it's quite a good platform to doing it. The only downside is if you only want to do one or two searches, it's fairly expensive when you then compare it to, say, 192, which you might use over a period of time. But what I would do is if you put in the address of a property and then put 192.com afterwards, 192.com afterwards, then what you can then do here is you can find that specific property, and this is really useful because with 192 it typically charges you per search, and then when you then click into a search it charges you again, whereas here you can go straight into that search. We can see it was last registered here, and we can actually see that we've got 3 people based at this property from 2002 to 2025. Perhaps they're just no good at gardening, but to me it does look like an empty property. And then what you can then do is click find out who lives here. It uses a credit to go through and then find out who's at this property. Here it is saying we have Ennio just living at this property, but it would actually turn around and say, here, look, who has been at this property? Leonardo Reynolds, Panina Reynolds, and this chap here as well. So we can actually find out who's living at the property to then be able to send a letter, track them down, or find out where they are. The other bit was, as I demonstrated earlier, was actually you can look again on Companies House for this detail. So we put in 86 Mill Hill Road. Here we go, we've got this, and you've got that on Companies House. So there's a name of an owner sitting on here as well. The other bit you can do as well, if we go into the address search, we'll just copy the address, we'll just type in 86 Mill Hill, and I've got one of it down in here, Mill Hill Road, Norwich, and then you can also search to find someone else just within that list at the same time. so you can find anything else or any other properties or addresses where people are registered. And this is quite powerful because, as you can see, you can then find out who was at that property. But look, Tristan, you found an easy one. How about I do this on a property where we don't have a owner registered? So the best bit with property data, one of the good bits is if you're using the Evaluate tool, as you scroll across it, you can see the owners of the plots. Wherever they're highlighted with an outline like I've just done there, that means that their plot or their titles are registered. If you keep going across and you find one and there's no outline, that means that that title has not been registered. So let's just do this in this little area. And there's most of these have all been registered. Usually you find one where it's missing. So here we go. I've just stumbled across one down here. Finally found an empty one, or not an empty property, but one where you can see it's not registered. Here at number 60, you can see nothing is appearing. So we've got 62 but not 60. So what we would do is repeat the same progress by clicking on the property. Our lovely little piece of software at Property Data will return the name and address of that detail of that property. But I can see that's on Unthanked Road, so just to speed up the process, this is 60 Unthanked Road. So we can see that this property is here, it's 60 Unthanked Road, and I'm going to just change that to the number 60. And then you can suddenly see that there's this property here. You can see here on the same side, if we were using house prices, the Zoopla has quite kindly even just told us we haven't got a property or a search listed or a transaction listed in the past for this, which means they don't have it registered at Land Registry. So that's another way of doing it. You can look through Land Registry, you can look through the Gov website. You can see here data is unavailable, and being unavailable, that means a transaction hasn't been listed. So say for example we were interested in this property, I would do the same process where we simply search for that property address. We can do a few different things here. So one of the good things is you can find planning alerts. So if you look for planning in your area, you can find someone who may be living at the property. If you search, there's a lovely little website called planning.org. I've seen this quite a few times come up, and it will tell us when an application in and who it was received by. The reason this can be interesting is you can then turn and say, okay, we know there's a planning application here. For example, we could then go to Norwich City Council, planning.Norwich City Council. You can put that same planning application number in, and that will then return the details of the property, and it will, in the documents, there'll be a document in here which will be the application data, and in that application data here, application form for tree works, you'll be able to find that person's contact details. So that's another way to do it. So you've tried doing it that way, tried another, and you can look through there. But what happens if we've got a name and we still can't find them? It could be that they've passed away. And in this unfortunate case, there is a probate search. There is a website designed especially for this, and the whole idea is you can jump straight in, sign in, and you're able to find the last will or last wishes of someone who's passed away and who the probate was granted to. So in this case, for example, you could try search someone. I'm just making a fictitious name up, and we can say we don't know what year they died in, but then you can then turn around and click search and search. So say for example you put in, because it's asking for one, we put in 2015. You can then click save and search. You don't need to enter any more details, and what it'll then do is it'll say there was no one in that year that had that passed away with that name. In the following year, no one there. 2017, no one passed then. No one passed then. I'll just change this to my surname, and you'll be able to see if anyone doesn't know what my surname is, you'll be able to pick it up quite easily on Company's House. But if you went through, you can just go through and you can see anyone who's passed away, and then what you're able to do is if you did want any of these people's details, you're then able to simply select add to basket. You'll add to basket, and then it will return a download. Within that probate document, it will then include two documents that will come across to it. You'll have a copy of the probate grant, and you'll have a copy of the will. Within the probate grant, it will give you the details of the person who was the executor, who you could then write to and try and purchase that property from. So look, I have given you many different ways there to be able to find the owners of property, check whether a property is registered. whether there's an owner, if you can download the title, how you can identify them. So I hope you found this useful. It has gone on a little bit. Hopefully you give me a like for this video, you subscribe to the channel. If you've got any comments, please drop them below. Thank you very much. Cheers.